All right, so I forgot to include a few things about my earlier video about Ashton Kutcher and how Hollywood is determining our inner worlds and our inner morality for us, which includes our sexual morality. And I want to get into what I think is the best system in the modern era to find a significant other, a spouse or whatever, soulmate, twin flame. But first, I wanted to get to this piece because I forgot this, and I thought this was kind of interesting on a couple of different levels. And this is on Stephen Colbert's show. This is from Huffington Post. Cate Blanchett, my moral compass is in my vagina. And then it says, Happy International Women's Day. And they take a shot at Trump, Stephen Colbert, and Cate Blanchett. Now, first of all, Stephen Colbert has become the new moral barometer. You know, they have these different archetypes, these different roles that people play in our society, like the Marilyn Monroe role. There's always somebody that's in this Marilyn Monroe blonde bombshell, Britney Spears, that goes through emotional crisis, maybe is suicidal, maybe dies young. You see this archetype constantly being there. And one archetype we've seen is the comedian who speaks truth to power. And people think because the comedian's sort of a wise guy and he maybe has a heart and cares about things, he's more honest and more truthful. Jon Stewart had a much higher approval rating and more people thought they could get honest information from him than they did normal newscasters. And Stephen Colbert is now that guy. Remember, one of the first YouTube videos I ever saw was Stephen Colbert when he did that Bush correspondence dinner, and he just slammed Bush. It was really funny and really well done for that period of time. But he's since shown himself to be a shill and various other things. And they're really promoting him now. He's trending all the time. He's filling that role now that Trump is president. So we had Cate Blanchett on the show, and she said this thing where she said, my moral compass is in my vagina. And she said it like Trump says China. You can look at it. I'll leave a link in the description box. But it was weird the way she said it, their accent that she used. And Huffington Post is celebrating this, and it's being celebrated on the internet by feminists like it's a great accomplishment. But if some man said that his moral compass was in his penis, yeah, that would go over really well. And so you think about this, it's just bizarre because your moral compass should be in your heart. You should have a loving relationship with God and feel love in your hearts. And when you are about to do something you shouldn't, your heart should feel uneasy. Like it should be a feeling and not an intellectual morality where you're reasoning and you're using your mind and you're rationalizing, trying to figure out a way that you can excuse your behavior because you can think a way that it makes sense. Oh, this is, I deserve to do this because this person did this to me. And I've covered this in other videos. The assault cycle always begins with a victim statement. Where the sex offender or whoever you're doing something wrong, someone committing a crime, it starts with a victim statement, the poor me statement. Something happened to me, and this is where I'm giving myself permission to do something wrong. So you don't have mental morality in this case. It's something that should be a feeling, like you just can't do it. It's not in your heart's not in it. When people say my heart's not in it, that's a beautiful way to say that your heart recognizes what you're doing is wrong. You have your higher level intelligence. It's not a part of your soul's path. And your soul says, you're not supposed to do this. It just doesn't feel right. Something wrong about this. And then you just go on your way and you don't make this mistake. And that's coming from your connection to God, your connection to your soul's path. And it's a beautiful process. And in the same way, I think the best way to find a significant other in the modern day system is that you find a way to connect to God. And through, I do this heartfulness meditation. It's a great way to connect to God. Through meditation and prayer, whatever you do, that you have an internal connection to God. And through prayer and meditation, you realize something should be telling you need another person in your life. Not just because you're lonely, but there's some kind of inner compulsion saying, You start thinking about having kids. For women, the baby spirits that they're going to have start to descend around them, and they start to just have contact with them, and they fill them with this idea that they should have kids, and then they become more attractive to men because there's this baby spirit and their pheromones, all these types of things. And if it's an older person and you've gotten divorced or something, there'd just be some compulsion. You just feel it. And so your soul's saying, yeah, you should be thinking about, you're just becoming aware that this thing's going to happen for you. And so you put it in front of God and you present this situation saying, please send me somebody, not in a begging or desperate way like people pray when they beg, but it's, what, God, I recognize that I needed to be in a couple for various reasons, and I want the appropriate person. You're also contacting your soul and saying, there's somebody out there. There's a soul plan here that before you came down here, there was a soul plan. Your soul interacted with other souls that were going to incarnate. You have a spiritual support team. I've covered this in previous videos, and you're accepting that your reading of the situation is that you're supposed to be with somebody and that you want to find that specific person. Ideally, both people will do this, but it's better if the woman does this specifically, and then she makes contact with this soul beforehand somehow through prayer and putting it out there, and she can feel the presence of this soul even though she hasn't met this man physically yet. And of course, the man can do this too, but again, it's really important that the woman do this. And then through using her heart, she creates a vacuum to him. This is also done with God. In the heartfulness system, you're creating a vacuum with your heart through your love and your craving to be one with God, and you're pulling God into your heart. So there's transmission given, but on your side, that's ultimately what you're doing. Very beautiful process. And in terms of finding your significant other, there's love between your soul and this soul. There's some connection there. You've had some sort of prearrangement. I mean, there might be a variety of souls on this planet you can have this relationship with. And so you're pulling this one to you. You make contact first spiritually, and through this vacuum is created, and the vacuum is filled. The man's soul in this case would feel the love hopefully feel the love. And then when the two people meet, there's this immediate connection, and they both know it. And if they're both praying to God and they both have a vertical relationship with God, then they feel this connection, and it's a relationship where God is in between both people. Because when God isn't there, then you have two people having exclusively a horizontal relationship, and then they're both sucking energy off of each other. And when they go through tough times and one or both are depleted, the relationship just goes to crap because there's no love. Neither one of them has any love to give. But if you're vertically connected to God and you have a spiritual practice and you have love that's there from God that's coming through you, then you have more love to give to other people in your family because you're connected to the infinite source of love. And so having a legitimate living spiritual practice and being connected to God in this way and having your heart filled with God's love, then you're not depending on human love. Even though it's nice to have, you also have this love directly to God to give to other people. Anyways, when both people feel like, yeah, this God sent me this person, then you just got to know it. Like if you're sure of this, then you go into this relationship. Then when things go south, because there's going to be times, I can't imagine this doesn't happen for everybody, where you're just going to hate the other person. It's just they're going to get on your nerves. There's things that happen within a relationship. This happily ever after and no problems, a life without problems. You're living a very weak life because most souls come down here to have issues and to have things that they have to overcome. Every soul has that as part of your plan. And so within your marriage, you're going to have issues. Raising kids is difficult, and you're either going to have issues with your spouse or you're going to have external issues that is going to put pressure on your relationship. And when this happens, or your relationship goes south for some period of time, if you're sure that God sent this person to you, and you both are sure, then you stick it out, because it's just something where you go through bad times, nothing's perfect, and as you learn to do this, it gets easier and easier. So you just say, all right, I'm just not going to quit. This This is just a phase we're going through, just like you go through this on your spiritual journey. You're going to have bad times. You're going to have really bad times in your life. And when you have those bad times, you just got to ride through it. It's just like anything else. If you're playing a sport, it's like having a shooting slump or hitting slump. These things happen. You have dry periods in your life, and you're going to have dry periods in your relationship. You're going to have conflict, and you just got to not quit. You just got to see it through. You got to persevere. And it's just a lot easier. This is the beauty of the arranged marriage, the old-time arranged marriage in India. It's not so much now. Talked about this. It's more about financial gain now than it was in the past. But in the old-time arranged marriages, they just said, God brought me this person, and if it's like I got a crappy deal, I got a crappy deal. This is my marriage. But maybe you have something else. Maybe you have a great job. Maybe you have a lot of money. Maybe you have a great, family support system. You have a lot of loving relationships with your family, and maybe even your spouse's family. You really love your spouse's family. You just don't like your spouse. Like you hate your spouse, but you love his or her family, and that's why you have the village, and maybe you have people that help. You have these relationships, positive relationships, but maybe just not with your spouse. And if you know that you're definitely sure that you got the right person for you, then you can say, you know what, I'm benefiting spiritually. This is the person that God has sent me, and it's for my spiritual journey. It's going to bring me closer to God. It's going to make me a better person. There's some reason for this. And when you live a life like that, and you're sure that God is presenting what you need in your life, then life becomes a lot easier when you're dealing with the misery of life. And everybody deals with the misery of life. And so these are some things to think about, to add to the earlier video, because you know what? The way that your marriage is presented in these movies and what people have in their internal world is inaccurate. And most people are disconnected from their parents' relationship and real relationships. They don't really understand what their parents are doing in their marriage. They don't have enough contact with them. Kids, I mean, they're growing up and they're not observing their parents in healthy relationships. And then one day their parents get divorced. Kids are like, they have no idea why. They don't know. They have, maybe they heard some fights or whatever, anger, whatever. But they really just don't know. I mean, what I'm saying here is children they know more about TV relationships and movie relationships and things, fake, reality TV relationships. And that's what they see. And they don't even see their own parents having a good, healthy relationship, and most people don't. And so there's no training. There's no training in school. You don't even know what to do in a relationship. It's unrealistic because what they present in movies and all these other things are not realistic relationships. So connecting to whatever you're going to do in life, and your relationships are a centerpiece of this, but whatever you're doing in life, if you connect through God in some way or another, you feel confident. You surrender it to God. God, I'm putting this in your hands or whatever. There's this idea of some abstract sort of system here where you're surrendering it and saying, I want what's best for myself in terms of spirituality and growing together in some long-term relationship with somebody that's compatible spiritually in other ways. And so you can grow together and your relationship evolves from there. Anyways, I hope this is helpful for people. These are just a few thoughts about this. To add to the earlier video, it's Paul Romano reporting from the apocalypse. Everybody have a blessed day.